There is a place in northern New Mexico where the walls have absorbed more than 800 years of human life, where children still play in the same courtyards their ancestors walked, where the smell of wood smoke drifts from homes that were standing before Columbus ever set sail. This is Taos Pueblo, and it is not a museum. It is not a reconstruction. It is a living, breathing community that has never stopped. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly why this place is unlike anywhere else on Earth, what has kept it.
The distant echo of a drum, the soft padding of footsteps on packed earth. It's a peace that settles deep in your soul. Each corner you turn, each ladder you see leaning against a sun-baked wall, tells a story of resilience, of community, and of a profound connection to the natural world.
Standing through war, colonization, and the pressures of the modern world, and why the people who live here say their culture is not something from the past. Taos Pueblo sits about 1 mile north of the town of Taos in northern New Mexico. Construction on the site began around 1210 CE, using a building technique that had already been refined by Pueblo peoples across the Southwest for generations. Adobe, which is sun-dried mud brick mixed with straw and water, was stacked and shaped into walls thick enough to hold heat in winter and stay cool through the
Revolt on Indigenous Peoples Day. With Columbus Day recently replaced by Indigenous Peoples Day, today is the perfect time to learn about the Pueblo Revolt in 1680 right here in New Mexico. Joining us this morning to teach us more is historian Rafi Andonian. Did I say it right?
Yeah.
Perfect. To give
summer months. That was not an accident. It was engineering, worked out over centuries of living in a high desert climate, where temperatures swing hard between seasons. The most striking structure on the site today is the North House, a 5-story building that rises against the backdrop of the Taos Mountains. 5 stories of hand-built adobe, still standing after more than 800 years.
Pueblo is sharing its plan to build a heritage center it says will serve the entire Taos area. It's a sprawling development. News 13's Annalisa Pardo is live from home with a look. Annalisa.
Lizzie, Taos Pueblo shared its proposal with the Taos Town Council this week.
No steel frame, no concrete foundation in the modern sense. Just earth, water, straw, and the knowledge passed down from one generation to the next about how to keep those walls alive. Adobe requires regular replastering. The rain and wind slowly eat at the surface, so the people who live there must maintain the walls by hand, often using the same methods their ancestors used. The building is not preserved. It is cared for. The Taos people, part of the broader Pueblo cultural group, number approximately 1,900 enrolled members, according to the 2020 census. Not all of them live within the historic Pueblo structures full-time, but many families maintain their connection to the site through ceremony, tradition, and seasonal residence. That distinction matters because it gets at something the surface-level story about this place tends to miss. Taos Pueblo is not a relic that survived. It is a community that chose to endure. To understand what that choice cost, you have to look at the history honestly. In 1540, Spanish explorer Juan de Oñate arrived in the region, and with him came the long shadow of European colonization. The Taos people, like all Pueblo communities, faced pressure to abandon their spiritual practices, their language, and their way of organizing life. That pressure was not gentle. It came with military force and religious enforcement. For generations, the Pueblo people were made to work in labor systems imposed by colonial authorities, and their own ceremonies were suppressed or driven underground. Then came 1680, a date that most American history classes never mention but should. The Pueblo Revolt. Led by a man named Pope from Ocayowingue Pueblo, a coordinated uprising across multiple Pueblo communities drove the Spanish colonizers out of New Mexico. It was one of the only successful
Well, we're doing the adobe repairs here at the Presidio officers' quarters for the seismic retrofit of the building.
Indigenous revolts against European colonization in what would become the United States. The Taos people were part of that effort. The revolt did not permanently end Spanish presence in the region, but it forced a renegotiation of power, and many Pueblo communities were able to recover ceremonial freedoms that had been taken from them. That moment in 1680 is not ancient symbolism to the people of Taos Pueblo. It is living history in the most direct sense. It represents proof that collective action and cultural determination can push back against forces that appear overwhelming. That understanding shapes how the community thinks about preservation today. The 1900s brought a different kind of pressure. In 1970, Taos Pueblo received designation as a National Historic Landmark, a recognition that came with outside attention and the complicated relationship between federal acknowledgement and indigenous sovereignty. Then in 1992, the site was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site, placing it alongside places like the Great Wall of China and the Historic Center of Rome in terms of global cultural significance. That designation helped raise the international profile of Taos Pueblo and gave tribal leadership additional standing in conversations about land, preservation, and policy. Then came 2002, and arguably the most concrete victory of recent decades. The Taos Pueblo tribe successfully regained a portion of their ancestral lands. Land recovery for indigenous communities in the United States is extraordinarily rare. Legal systems, historical treaties rewritten under duress, and the sheer passage of time make it nearly impossible in most cases. The fact that the Taos people achieved it speaks to decades of persistent legal work, political organizing, and an unwillingness to let the claim go cold. Today, around 150,000 visitors come to Taos Pueblo each year, according to figures from 2020. That number represents both an opportunity and a challenge that the Tribal Council manages carefully. Tourism brings revenue. The New Mexico Tourism Department has documented that Native American cultural sites across the state generate tens of millions of dollars annually for local economies. At Taos Pueblo, that money funds programs, supports community members, and helps maintain the site itself. Without it, the financial pressure to modernize or commercialize in ways that would damage the cultural fabric would be much harder to resist. But tourism also brings risk. 150,000 visitors walking through a living community is not a small thing. There are conversations within the community about how much access is too much, about which spaces remain private, and about how to make sure the revenue from outside visitors does not come at the cost of the integrity of what makes the place worth visiting in the first place. The Tribal Council governs these decisions. They set visitor policies, determine which ceremonies are open to outside attendance, and enforce the rules around photography and behavior on the grounds. When public health concerns arose in recent years, those policies adapted. The council has consistently put community well-being ahead of visitor convenience. The arts made at Taos Pueblo are not crafts for tourists. They are expressions of a worldview. Pottery, weavings, and paintings produced by Taos artisans carry the spiritual beliefs and ancestral knowledge of the community in their forms, their patterns, and their materials. A piece of Taos pottery is not decoration. It is a language. The shapes and designs connect to specific ceremonial and cosmological meanings that have been maintained through direct teaching, family to family, generation to generation. When you buy a piece of art directly from a Taos Pueblo artisan, you are participating in an economic system that keeps those skills alive in a way that mass production simply cannot replicate. The annual Feast Day of San Geronimo is one of the ceremonial events that continues to draw both community members and outside visitors. It is a day that reflects the layered history of the Pueblo, blending Catholic religious elements introduced during the colonial period with deeply rooted traditional Taos spiritual practices. That blending is not confusion, it is adaptation. The Taos people did not simply accept or simply reject what colonization brought. They incorporated what served their community and held tight to what could not be replaced. The feast day is living evidence of that selective, intentional process. As of 2023, Taos Pueblo is running educational workshops and community programs specifically aimed at younger generations. This is where the long-term story either holds or breaks. The elders who carry the most detailed knowledge of ceremonial practice, language, and building technique are not going to be here forever. The question of whether the generation growing up now will carry that knowledge forward is the most pressing one facing the community. These programs are not nostalgic exercises. They are the infrastructure of cultural survival. Teaching a 15-year-old how to replaster an adobe wall or how to fire traditional pottery is not about recreating the past. It is about making sure the future still has those skills available. There is a tension in all of this that deserves to be named directly. Approximately 1,900 tribal members navigate a world that includes smartphones, highway access, global markets, and federal bureaucracy, while also maintaining connection to ceremonial practices and architectural traditions that are over 800 years old. Some people look at that and see contradiction. The people of Taos Pueblo largely do not see it that way. The challenge is not choosing between the old and the new. The challenge is deciding what is worth protecting and what the cost of protecting it really is. The mainstream story about places like Taos Pueblo tends to frame them as fragile, as things that need to be saved by outside attention and outside money. The evidence from Taos pushes back against that framing. This community drove out colonizers in 1680. It survived the full weight of 19th century assimilationist policy. It won back ancestral land in 2002. It manages 150,000 annual visitors on its own terms. The Taos people are not waiting to be saved. They are making decisions every year about what survival looks like and what it costs. The 5-story North House will need replastering again, just as it has every year for more than 8 centuries. Someone will mix the mud, climb the ladder, and press new material into the old walls with their hands. That act connects them directly to every person who did the same thing before them, going back to 1210 CE. That is what living history actually means. Not a sign on a wall explaining what used to happen here. The thing itself still happening,